I was never one to shy away from a good thrift store find. My roommate, Sarah, shared my enthusiasm for the hunt, and we often embarked on weekend excursions to scour these dusty treasure troves for hidden gems. However, it was on one fateful Saturday afternoon that our shared love for thrifting led us down a path neither of us could have ever anticipated. It was a gloomy, overcast day, with the sun hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. The air had that crisp chill of early autumn, and the promise of rain hung heavily in the air. Sarah and I had just finished our usual coffee and brunch routine when she suggested we explore a new thrift store that had recently opened in town. Naturally, I agreed without hesitation. The thrift store, which was aptly named the Forgotten Relics, had an ominous aura that was impossible to ignore. It was tucked away in a forgotten corner of the town, far from the bustling streets and trendy shops. The building itself looked like it had been plucked from a different era, with its creaky wooden floors and dimly lit interior. As we ventured deeper into the store, we passed rows upon rows of old furniture, dusty books, and assorted knickknacks. That's when Sarah spotted it, tucked away in a corner of the store, covered by a moth-eaten shroud. It was a mirror, but not just any mirror. It was ornately framed with an eerie, otherworldly design etched into the glass. Sarah's eyes lit up with curiosity, and she approached the mirror as if it were a long-lost friend. The mirror was imposing, almost as tall as she was, with a presence that seemed to demand attention. As she removed the shroud, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. There was something undeniably unsettling about it. "Isn't it amazing?" Sarah exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything quite like it." I nodded, unable to shake the feeling that something was off. The design on the mirror seemed to shift and writhe, as though it were alive. I took a step back, my unease growing by the second. "Are you sure you want that thing?" I asked cautiously. Sarah turned to me, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Absolutely. It's a steal at only $50, and it'll be perfect for our living room." Despite my reservations, I couldn't argue with the price, and Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious. Reluctantly, I helped her carry the mirror to the checkout counter, where the shopkeeper, a wizened old man with a crooked grin, rang up the purchase. As we left the store, the first raindrops began to fall, casting an eerie ambience over the scene. Sarah and I struggled to secure the mirror in the back of her car, and I couldn't help but glance back at the Forgotten Relics one last time. It seemed to leer at me from the darkness, as if it knew the secrets it held. Over the next few days, things started to change. Sarah became increasingly obsessed with the mirror. She would spend hours in front of it, staring at her reflection with an intensity that was unnerving. Her once vibrant personality began to wane, replaced by a sense of detachment that left me worried. One night, as I was lying in my bed, I heard a soft, haunting melody echoing through our apartment. It was unlike any music I had ever heard before, filled with melancholy and despair. I followed the haunting sound to the living room, where Sarah stood in front of the mirror, her fingers tracing the etchings on the glass. "Sarah, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't respond, her gaze fixated on the mirror. I watched in horror as her reflection began to distort, the features twisting and contorting into something grotesque. It was as though the mirror had a life of its own, and it was using Sarah as its vessel. "Sarah!" I screamed, rushing forward and grabbing her by the shoulders, trying to pull her away from the mirror's malevolent grip. But she was unnaturally strong, her eyes filled with a madness that sent chills down my spine. And then, as I desperately tried to pry her away from the mirror, I noticed that her eyes were bleeding, crimson tears streaming down her face. She was lost in a trance, unable to break free from the mirror's hypnotic hold. At that moment, I knew I had to find answers. I delved into research about the mirror, uncovering a grim legend that sent shivers down my spine. The mirror was said to be a relic from a time when dark rituals were performed, a gateway to another realm inhabited by malevolent spirits. It was believed to be cursed by a Wendigo, a cannibalistic spirit that possessed those who dared to gaze upon it for too long. Desperation led me back to the Forgotten Relics. But when I arrived, the store was abandoned, its windows shattered, and its interior in disarray. It was as though it had been hastily vacated, leaving behind only the echoes of dread. Determined to save Sarah, I devised a plan to break the mirror's hold. Armed with sage, holy water, and a heart filled with resolve, I returned to our apartment, preparing myself for the confrontation. Sarah was still in the living room, her face inches from the mirror's surface. Her eyes were soaked and stained from blood. She looked gaunt, her once vibrant features now drained of life. I approached cautiously, calling her name. "Sarah, it's me. You have to snap out of it." She turned her head slowly, her eyes now vacant. "It's too late," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. I began the ritual, waving the smoldering sage around her and reciting ancient incantations. The room seemed to grow colder, and the mirror began to emit a low, guttural growl. I could feel the malevolent force resisting, fighting back with a ferocity that defied explanation. But I pressed on, determined to free Sarah from the mirror's grip. I splashed holy water onto the mirror's surface, and it hissed and sizzled as though burned by its touch. The mirror, with its twisted etchings and dark history, seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, like a beast backed into a corner, ready to strike back with all its might. It was as if the very fabric of reality trembled in fear of what was about to unfold. I could see cracks forming on the glass, like veins of a poisoned river, snaking across its surface. Each fracture seemed to release a wail of agony, a mournful lament for the evil it had harbored for so long. I pressed on, determined to free Sarah from the mirror's grip. I splashed holy water onto the mirror's surface, again and again. The room quivered, the walls groaning in protest, as if the very essence of the place was rebelling against the mirror's malevolence. And then, with a deafening roar that seemed to shake the foundations of the earth, I watched in horror as Sarah was pulled into the mirror, her screams echoing in my ears as she vanished into the otherworldly abyss. And the mirror shattered. The shards exploded outward like a deadly rain of glass, each piece a fragment of the mirror's dark soul. The air was filled with a cacophony of shattering, like a symphony of despair and fury. I was left standing there, tears streaming down my face as I gasped for air, my ears ringing with the echoes of that terrible moment. The room lay in ruins, the mirror's malevolence finally vanquished, but it had a terrible cost. I had lost my friend, consumed by the Wendigo that had lurked within. The Forgotten Relics remained a cursed memory, forever abandoned, and I was left haunted by the disappearance of Sarah. I couldn't help but wonder if she was trapped in that otherworldly realm, forever lost to the Wendigo's insatiable hunger. It was a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my days, a chilling reminder that some horrors were all too real.